Welcome to Chicago Style Parenting, where we delve into parenting life in Chicago and uncover the resources, information, and support that Chicago families need. I'm Amy Johnson, Executive Director of NPN.
And I'm Satara, Director of Content Marketing and Social Strategy at MPN. We are thrilled to introduce you to today's guest, Mark Berkman from the Organization for Social Media Safety. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about the Organization for Social Media Safety and how it started?
Of course. So we are the first national consumer protection organization focused exclusively on social media. So in plain language, that means that our mission is to protect families from all the harms either created by social media or made worse through social media. So harms I'm sure we'll get into like cyberbullying, human trafficking, fraud, all the mental health impacts like eating disorders, depression, suicide. There unfortunately is a much longer list and I could keep going, but our job is to protect against all of those harms. We do that using a consumer protection model. So again, in plain language, that means that we have three departments working to make social media safer for families. So we do education work. We are in K through 12 schools across the US, including in Illinois and Chicago in a big way. We leverage that on the ground footprint into research. We have an ongoing research partnership with UCLA School of Education, so we can put out cutting edge research on how these social media related risks are changing and evolving along with the technology, which they are constantly doing. We do advocacy work, so from Congress to state capitals to the local school board level, we are working on a nonpartisan basis or on public policy to improve our laws around social media safety. And then finally, we work on technology. So software and applications that provide real-time protection against any and all social media related harms, which I'm sure we'll also get into as well. So that is who we are and what we do at the 10,000 foot level. You asked how we started too. So we began in 2016, really. My co-founder, Ed Peisner, at the time, his then 14-year-old son, Jordan, was at a local fast food restaurant with some friends after school, like all of our teen kids do, when another teen that Jordan did not know walked up behind him and violently struck him in the head, struck Jordan in the head as hard as he could. While the attacker's friends filmed it and they uploaded it to social media where the video went viral very quickly. I happened to be a chief of staff for a state legislator at the time in this area in California. And this video landed in my inbox within about an hour of its happening. That's how quickly it went viral in the area and then nationally as well. And I ended up being able to connect with Ed about a week or two later after Jordan had stabilized. Jordan ended up in the ICU with very severe brain injuries, and fortunately, he's recovered now. He does have some permanent injuries, but he is recovered now. Just so you know that. But Ed and I connected, and we both knew intuitively that this wasn't an isolated issue. And so my office started doing some research. And it turns out that what we now call social media motivated violence, or these attacks committed for the purpose of filming them and sharing them on social media to get these likes, the shares, the views, or what our kids today would call clout. These types of videos were doubling every single year since the birth of major social media as we know it around 2006 with Facebook. So we could go back to 2006 and we found about 4 videos shared on what was then Facebook Live with teens walking up behind people. These were all teen attackers, unfortunately, but walking up behind people and striking them as hard as they could to see them fall down unconscious. It was called the knockout game at the time. So it started with those four, and you fast forward to 2016, we found thousands and thousands of these videos. There were websites just dedicated to hosting them as well. And so what we did was we drafted first in the nation legislation called Jordan's Law, named after Jordan Peisner, to deter social media motivated violence. We passed that law in California in less than a year, which is very quick for legislation to move and pass because everyone recognized the great need here. While we were doing that work and getting to the story of the Organization for Social Media Safety, while we were doing that work, we realized that there was no consumer protection organization out there working to protect families from these harms that were growing in plain sight. So there were millions of teens, there still are, unfortunately, millions of teens and tweens being exposed to this type of violence. It was becoming normal to them. And no one had given it a name, no one was educating on it, no one was legislating on it. Uh, and that's just one issue. And we looked around and saw all these harms that I had named earlier that were being perpetrated or made worse through social media. And so we really felt driven, Ed and I, to found the organization back in 2017. And now our work is all across the world, and we're protecting millions of families from these harms. As we'll get into, there's a lot of work here, of course, left to do, especially in the area of raising awareness with families and parents.
I mean, like,
Right, that was a lot, but
there's there's so much there, but the work that you all are doing is so important. I remember seeing like some of those knockout videos and thinking, this is cruel. Like, and who even enjoys watching this? And every now and then I'll come across people like pranking other people. It's not to the point of like physical, you know, damage being done or abuse being done, but I am so amazed at the things that people will do for clout, as you said, or for likes or comments. So yeah, it's an issue that's been around, but the fact that it started with six of them in 2006 and is now this huge, massive, problem that has taken shift and shape shift into many different forms is I don't it's kind of scary to me how much it's evolved and grown over such a short period of time.
yeah, it's incredibly concerning. As you talk about the cloud, and this is what we teach the children, and we use Jordan's Law as a teaching tool across the country very effectively. But we teach the children, the reason we usually open up our curriculum with social media motivated violence is because it is a very salient way to get the teens and the tweens as well to start thinking about why they're replicating certain behaviors on social media. And they start to realize that they're driven by this need to get these likes, shares, and views. And why? What is that really worth? What does that mean? Are the behaviors that we're replicating to get the likes and shares and views, are those safe? Are those kind? Are those worthwhile? And we see with social media motivated violence in a very visceral way that oftentimes they're not, that what gets us likes, shares, and views is violence, cruelty, something inflammatory. And so to be able to use this particular danger to get children to think about that, we find is a very powerful way to get them to change their behaviors on social media, and even as they continue to use it as they get older. Adults need this lesson, as you both know, very much as well. And I should say too, because we're speaking to Chicago families here, social media motivated violence is a particular issue in Chicago. We see a lot of these videos in the city and around. Some of them are associated with gang violence as well, where gangs are using it to share and again get that clout. So this is a real problem. But the bigger issue thematically for us is teaching about clout and how it's driving and changing our behaviors in society.
Yeah. It's chilling. I mean, you kind of touched on on this. I was going to ask if there was anything unique to Chicago the Chicago family should be aware of, or are the same things, the same dangers everywhere?
So, social media motivated violence is a danger really everywhere. And just to get into some statistics, we have found it's about over 80% of fifth graders have seen explicit real life violence on social media. And so the amount of exposure at a young age is very concerning. That has, by the research, uh, potentially short and long-term psychological impact on these children as well. And so whether or not these acts of violence are happening on a particular child's school campus, it's still an issue with the exposure. Now, the violence is happening on a lot of school campuses, both in Chicago and across the country with regularity. It's something that parents need to be aware of. We will find on various social media platforms that there will be entire accounts, entire pages just dedicated to a single school saying X school fights. And you can go in and the students will upload the fights that they're having on or around campus associated with that school. That's still on particularly a platform like Instagram. We could go on and find that right now, which at the Organization for Social Media Safety just boggles our mind that the platforms are allowing these pages to stay up without getting taken down and sharing this type of violence. And the violence, by the way, gets very severe and extreme. There have been deaths, severe injuries like Jordan Eisner's. So very concerning. But parents do need to be aware that this is happening on social media. The amount of exposure is concerning. As we get into some of the concrete interventions and maybe we do this right now, that parents can take, they need to think about this harm. Maybe I'm jumping the gun on the conversation a little bit, but
It's fine.
as we talk about this danger and as we talk about the other dangers, what we want parents to do when our children enter this world of social media, and that includes being exposed to it outside the home as well. So you might not allow it in your home, but children at their extracurricular activities, play dates, they're looking at various content through social media through their friends. And so, around the fourth, fifth grade, what we want parents to think about is three different categories of interventions. This is what we call our buckling the social media seatbelt system. And so first, we want parents to think about those social media safety conversations. This is about raising awareness around the harms that your children can and likely will be exposed to through social media. And social media motivated violence is one of them. And so our children cannot protect themselves from harms very well if they don't understand what they are. And so these conversations are critical. We're also instilling necessary values and principles when we have these conversations too. So our children need to understand that social media motivated violence, perpetrating it for clout, that's not something that conforms to our family or our community's values. It's wrong. It is unsafe, very unsafe. So our children need to understand that so that they react in a safe way when they come across this type of content or when they see it happening in real life as well. So those conversations are critical no matter your children's age, by the way. That continues up to and even beyond 18,
Yeah.
but especially for our younger children. Our social media safety rules. So what we want our children to do every time that they're on social media or every time that they come across a certain instance, harm on social media. One example of that is what we call blocking and reporting. That means blocking someone who's posting unsafe, harmful content so that the child cannot see that content from that poster or person again on their social media feeds. And reporting means reporting the content to the social media platform so that it can be taken down. So this is exactly what we want to teach our children to do when they come across a harm like social media motivated violence. And I should say too, whether or not the platform takes it down, and they're getting worse and worse about taking clearly dangerous content down, We still want our children to block and report as a rule, and hopefully eventually as a habit, because what it's also doing is your child is really taking the physical steps of repelling that content, preventing it from becoming normal to them. And that is very protective to our children. So those are our rules. Lastly, what we call calibrating the settings. So making sure that the safety settings on our children's devices and apps are set to the appropriate level for our child. So for example, we want to make sure, especially with our tweens and younger teens, we want to make sure they can't download a social media platform without our permission. So that's a setting that we want on our children's operating systems on their devices. Another example is making sure if our children are on social media that their privacy settings are maximized. So a lot of different options in there as well. But those are the three categories: the conversations, rules, and settings that we want parents to think about. I apologize, I probably jumped a question or two there, but it's very much related to the when we're talking about social media motivated violence, the next question of what do we do as parents? And these are what we want parents to be thinking about in terms of actions to take.
Yeah, I think one thing that you mentioned that was concerning to me when it first kind of went into action was the recent change to fact checking online, and any issues that that might present for kids as they're just on social media, and for all users of social media, really. Like, how do you think that the reduction or complete removal of fact checking software on social media platforms is impacting how our children consume information online?
Yeah, so first I would say when we're talking about misinformation or disinformation, so misinformation is just unintentionally passing along incorrect information. Disinformation is intentionally passing along false information for some sort of purpose or reason. I would highlight first, this is a non-partisan issue. When we get into specific examples, different sides of the aisle may have different opinions on specific things, but as a concept, this is a harm for all of us, and we don't need to get into specific examples. I think for all of us to agree on that, the Organization for Social Media Safety is a staunchly nonpartisan organization. So our work is to work with people of all ideologies on what we all clearly agree is harmful to us. So misinformation, disinformation, as concepts, they are dangerous. And there are things that we should think about in terms of teaching our children to protect them from basically ingesting incorrect information and having them basically internalize that and use that in how they see the world. And so there are techniques that we can teach our children, a skill set on basically called media literacy, so that we're teaching them as a habit to critically analyze the information that they're taking in over social media. And we want our children to do that whenever they're using social media and they're seeing news. We want them to go through steps in their brain of, is this a source that I trust? Is this reliable information? If it's not, we want them moving past it. Another thing that we do, it's harder for parents to do, another thing we do as we teach children are looking at the tactics that people spreading disinformation use. And if you can identify those tactics when you see content on social media pop up, you're going to be far more resilient to internalizing that information. That's identifying little techniques that are used to spread disinformation. So false appeals to authority, for example, is one tactic that people will build up a source as a big authority figure to spread disinformation. And if you're looking at that critically and you know that's a common tactic used, you can ask yourself, is this really a credible authority? Why are they pointing to this authority? And it helps person measure whether that piece of information is reliable. So teaching that type of literacy is very important. we're seeing a lot of harm from this, just in general, and again, in a way that no matter what your political beliefs are, an overwhelming majority of us would agree is harmful. And I think it's a very important point to highlight.
Yeah.
Um, to the point on platforms on that disinformation piece as well, that does get into a partisan issue. There is some discrepancy there on what people of different political ideologies think is the correct intervention for this. It is both true at the same time that disinformation is dangerous and censorship can be dangerous as well, especially on political thought. Those are both dangerous. What we really think and we want to see more happening is empowering parents and consumers to use what we call third-party middleware software. So not connected to the social media platform, where consumers are empowered to say, I don't want to see these certain things on my platform. I'm not relying on the CEO of this one company to decide that for me. I'm going to decide as a consumer through this other option, and they're going to filter out for me and my family what I think is unsafe. And I think that potentially gets around this divide we might be seeing on this issue.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so we've talked about social media related violence. We've talked about disinformation and misinformation online and teaching kids to think critically about that. How do social media platforms currently handle issues like cyberbullying and online predators? And what changes would you like to see?
Yeah, the platforms are really doing a poor job on these issues, and they're getting worse and worse because they're realizing that we're living in a very complicated, inundated news environment. And no matter what negative news is coming out on the platforms, their revenue continues to go up. The user engagement continues to go up. And so we're seeing a drawdown on trust and safety. We're seeing them take longer and longer to remove content that, again, is non-controversially dangerous. So severe cyberbullying, uh, teen to teen, is staying up. We're seeing them take a long time to remove what is clearly content around sexual predation as well. So it's very concerning. I think we need to continue to join together as parents, again, in a nonpartisan, bipartisan way to continue to put pressure on the social media platforms to do a better job. In the meantime, again, what we're working on both federally, we're working on this in Illinois and other states as well. We're pushing legislation called Sammy's Law. This is a bill named after Sammy Chapman, 16-year-old out here in California, was bored one day, went on to the social media platform Snapchat, connected with a drug dealer he did not previously know. Drug dealer sent him a drug menu. This is how they operate on social media. Sammy picked out what he thought was some Xanax, got delivered to his house basically like a pizza while his parents were sleeping. And it turns out that Xanax actually was poisoned with the drug fentanyl, which everyone's probably heard of at this point, which can be very lethal at very small doses. And Sammy tragically passed away because of that fentanyl overdose. So Sammy's Law, named after Sammy Berman Chapman, what that would do is it would require all social media platforms that our children are using, including Snapchat, to give parents the choice to be able to use third-party safety software. So that is, again, software not connected to the social media platform we're talking about children's safety software here, so a little different than that previous conversation, but this software can give parents alerts when dangerous content comes across a child's social media account. And so, as you just asked, Amy, cyberbullying, sexual predation, drug trafficking, parents can get that alert and provide life-saving intervention at the right time. This is critical for our children's safety. It is unconscionable that certain platforms will block this type of access, like Snapchat and TikTok. Other platforms allow it. Um, and so when we talk about how poorly the platforms are doing with regard to cyberbullying, sexual predation, and some other issues, this is one intervention they could implement tomorrow that would provide really substantial protection for our children. And then for the parents listening, companies that do this include Bark, BARK. There's another company called Bright Canary, Net Nanny. These are all companies that exist today that provide this type of service. We have seen it save many, many lives.
Wow.
Why do you think these platforms won't allow that? I mean, how would it hurt them?
It's a good question. So, in my opinion, I have to say that, but in my opinion, they do not want to give parents the choice of these platforms for business and revenue reasons. There is a conflict of interest that we see with the social media industry between safety and revenue. And some of the things that they need to do in regard to safety will discourage child users from using their platform for hours a day. Snapchat, for example, is a platform that enables teens, and many tweens are using Snapchat as well, as we all know as parents. It enables our teens and tweens to send self-deleting messages. And so over Snapchat, we see cyberbullying, we see drug dealing, we see sexual predation, we see sexting. Teens know this. They like that level of privacy that Snap affords them, and so Snap does not want any sort of this type of parental supervision from third-party safety software, in my opinion, because it will cost them this type of engagement from their child users.
Mhm. So, thinking through that, parents, of course, want our children to be connected to their peers, and we want them to have friendships and relationships with them, a lot of which, even if they go to school with their peers, happens online. What strategies can families implement to promote healthy social media habits while still allowing their kids to stay connected with each other?
Yeah, so this really gets at what we call the lose-lose trade-off. And so as parents, caregivers, you have this horrible choice right now of maximizing safety for your child on the one hand, which means holding them off social media as long as you can.
Yeah.
Or on the other hand, as we all know as parents, especially parents right now of fourth and fifth and sixth graders, if you get those 2 to 3 kids in your child's class on a particular social media platform like Snapchat or TikTok, pretty soon you have that whole grade on social media because as we all know, this is how our children are communicating through these platforms. It's how they're maintaining their friendships. And so you have this choice of maximizing safety or putting your child at what is a real social detriment, which causes harm as well, to be clear. And so there is harm on both sides of the equation that parents are grappling with. And so parents have this awful choice of withholding or letting our children on. To sidestep your question for a second, one of our interventions is to work with the entire community to push that trade-off down the road, to get most of the parents on board with holding off until our children are more developmentally ready for social media use, which really does mean, by the platform's own admission, 13 years old. And by and large, that's not happening. We see most fifth graders under 13 on social media. It's in the 90% range. So that's kind of answer number one to that question. The second one then is once they get on social media, once they start getting exposed to social media, it's embracing that buckling the social media seatbelt system that I discussed earlier. So it's making sure that we have that full range of conversations. We suggest moving those conversations by specific harm, because again, the purpose there is raising awareness about what these harms are, what they look like in the world of social media, how they harm you. Our children need to understand that. That includes risks like human trafficking and sexual predation. Because if our kids are on social media, they're at risk for those harms. And that includes, by the way, gaming platforms like Roblox, where we see cases of predation and sextortion happen with regularity, as reported by the press. So those conversations are essential. I should say we have a full free course available on our website, so we could get to how to get to that at the end. But in that course, we have a full checklist of these conversations to make sure that you're being thorough as you move through these conversations with your child. Again, the rules. So we have a full template. This is all for free, again, of what rules to consider setting with your child. We recommend doing that in writing, put up in your children's room if they're on social media, so everyone's clear, here are the rules. And the truth of the matter is, if our children follow the social media safety rules, it makes the use significantly safer. These are very simple, clear rules that don't take away from their beneficial use of social media at the end of the day for our teen users. And then back to our settings. So really, we need to take that time if we're allowing our children on social media to learn about how to calibrate those settings. It sounds more complicated than it is if you're not a tech person. Really is about following a step-by-step process. We do have a tutorial, again, for free on our site of how to do that. But you can also go to Google anytime you download a social media platform for your child and just say, how do I maximize safety settings on Snapchat or TikTok or whatever the platform is, and get those settings up correctly. And we really want parents to think about third-party safety software like Bark as well.
Can you give us an example of one rule that you mentioned that you suggest? I know you have several on the website, but you said it can keep their social media use so much safer. And I'm thinking about, do kids follow those rules? Like, what's one example that of a rule that families have success with?
Yeah, so to that last point there, do kids follow the rules? If you are making clear, first of all, doing it in writing by the research significantly increases compliance with rules. Knowing that there is a consequence for violating rules also increases compliance. Best practice for that compliance, for that consequence, is that our consequences for violating family rules, no matter what they are, is that the consequence is related in nature to the misbehavior and proportional to how severe we think the misbehavior is. So as parents, we know in real life that's really hard to do for all the stuff our kids may be doing.
Yeah.
When it comes to our social media safety rules, it's actually very easy. If they violate the social media safety rules, they lose access either to the social media or the device. And if we're doing that consistently, it really, again, by the research, is a good deterrent. And then finally, if our children know why we have those rules, and this goes back to the conversations, which is different than our rules. If they know why the rules exist, if they understand the harms that we're trying to protect them from, they're far more likely to comply with that list of rules. A very simple one. So I mentioned some of these are simple, but have such a profound effect. When we're talking about harms like sexual predation and human trafficking, these are harms that we see happen all the time over social media. As I mentioned, they're happening on gaming platforms with younger children as well. These are lower frequency harms, to be clear. So we see about 40 to 50% of our teens self-report being cyberbullied. That's a high frequency, very concerning harm. It's a lower frequency, to be clear, on human trafficking and sexual predation. But the rules that our kids follow are so simple. They don't block their use, their enjoyment of the apps if they're of the right age to be using them. And one of those is just that they should not be connecting with people that they do not know in real life over social media. Uh, Very simple rule. If they don't do that, it is extremely effective, extremely likely that they're not going to have that worst case scenario where somebody's catfishing them. And we see this happen in these cases. An adult trafficker is pretending to be another teen. And so they build up a relationship on social media. Eventually, they ask to meet up in person. The actual teen goes out and they're meeting up with a trafficker. Um, just the step of, hey, I'm not going to develop a relationship as a 13 or 14-year-old with someone I don't know over social media, that really eliminates the possibility of that worst case scenario happening. And it still allows them to connect with their friends that they know from school, from activities in real life. And so that's an example of one of the rules that's up on our list there. That again, easy to follow, highly effective.
Yeah, parents just need to stay on top of it. Like, this is not, we can't slack on this. It's just one of those things that parents have to keep the energy for.
Yeah.
100%. 100%. And the reason I think a lot of parents don't is because our kids get on social media, everyone else is doing it, and they're just on, and it becomes part of our life. And it just seems so complicated and difficult to manage. And that is why we created a system for parents, a checklist for those conversations. Here's your rules ready to go to print out. We have these resources ready to go to make it manageable for parents. Otherwise, it seems just like an insurmountable problem we just have to submit to because every other family is allowing their child on social media.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. It can seem overwhelming for parents. The tech, the what other families are allowing or not allowing, and how far your kid can go, like the kid's abilities to manage all this tech is, it is more than a parent's ability in many cases.
Yeah.
But having a step-by-step guide for parents to follow would really, I would have benefited from that. It would be really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we sense was needed because we spent a lot of time in development of our curriculum, both for students and parents. And parents are just, we didn't grow up with this ourselves still at this point.
Right.
And there's just a feeling of overwhelm of what do I do and how do I do it? I don't know. So I'm going to have some level of general conversation and then hope for the best. And parents really need this help of here are the steps to take. And it's not insurmountable. It's specific, concrete, and very much doable.
Yeah, I think adding to that level of overwhelm is also knowing that kids are spending a lot of their time outside of the home. So it's like we can do as much as we can during the time that you're home for dinner and nighttime, and extended, breaks from school. But what can schools do, or what would you recommend that schools do in the time that they have our children, which, is 8 hours of the day in most cases?
Yeah, I very much appreciate the question. I am clearly biased here, but I would say it is really important that schools have the Organization for Social Media Safety come in to provide this education to students and parents. And we also consult with schools, as I talked about, on those community-based policies to get around that lose-lose trade-off. So that is a service that we offer. It's a service that we've partnered with a lot of schools in the Chicago area with really great impact. And the reason this is also so important to have an outside organization come and do this is that, as I mentioned earlier, these risks are evolving. They're changing. Our children's use is changing. That story with Sammy Chapman about the drug dealing, that drug trafficking was not much of a concern when we began this work. It really exploded on the scene somewhat suddenly. And so we have an organization, an infrastructure built around understanding these risks and how they're evolving. And then by having our expert educators like Ed Peisner come in, we're creating a really salient, memorable experience for the children that they want to have. They want to learn how to be safer. And so by taking it with someone outside the school with a very carefully curated uh, presentation format that's engaging to the students, it really does change their behavior on social media in a much more impactful, significant way. So that direct student piece is important. Having us be able to come in with the parents, because when we go work with the students, we're actually able, working with the school, to get an assessment of the harms that are happening on the ground with social media. And as I mentioned, we've never been to a school where there's less than 35%, and we've been to schools across the country. This is hundreds of thousands of students. We've never been to a school with less than 35% of the children themselves self-reporting being cyberbullied. And so when we can speak to the parents with this education and say, this isn't some big abstract theoretical harm. Here's what's happening with your students. And that really, really helps in changing the parents' behavior, that they adopt these evidence-based recommendations at the end of the day. And then that last piece, working with the entire community, especially K through 5, K through 8, working with the whole community to push back that age of entry to safer ages. Even just smartphone acquisition in and of itself, and we believe this is because of social media access, but there was a huge study done by an organization called Sapien Labs that found that every year earlier that a child acquires a smartphone, from 19 down to the age of 6, and so it doesn't start at 13 or 14, this is 19 down to the age of 6, every year earlier that a child gets a smartphone, there's a statistically significant increase in anxiety, depression, self-harm, including suicide. And so pushing that age back as a community, getting around that lose-lose trade-off, this is something that we do with schools, is so protective as well. So I appreciate the question. We're biased. Obviously, if schools can't bring us in, we want them to educate on social media safety. We want them to be working with their students and parents on these issues as well. But our preference is we have the services ready to go, and we know that they're evidence-based in terms of their impact.
That's great. This is that 35% is sobering.
Well, couple that, not unfortunately, sometimes people leave depressed after listening to me speak. Maybe not just on this stuff. I don't know. Hopefully, just on this. But
Right.
couple that with, on a serious note, couple that the average really we're finding is in the 40 percentile on cyberbullying. Couple that with the statistic that cyberbullying triples the likelihood that a teen will attempt suicide. And so we need to take cyberbullying with the utmost of care and seriousness. In Chicago, I should refer to the case of Nate Braunstein, a 15-year-old who was cyberbullied by his classmates and then died by suicide. So this is happening locally in Chicago. It's happening across the country. These are horrifying, tragic cases. And when you look at these cases, there were points where there could have been intervention as well, both in the moments of cyberbullying, and then also with the schools taking a preemptive action to change the climates and change what's happening on social media. No one school, when we look at these numbers, I should say these cut across the board. So it's not a problem at any one given school. We see in private schools, in public schools, rural, urban, suburban. It's like that 40% number is so consistent. So every school really needs to take some sort of action here on the issue of cyberbullying.
Yeah. Uh, sorry, I'm getting lost. Satara, we'll probably have to edit that little piece out. I'm sorry.
No, all good. All
Sorry
good.
to add to editing. Um, Mark, I guess as we wrap up, I just want to ask if there's anything else you want to share or you want parents to know about this issue.
Yeah, well, first of all, I really appreciate you all having me on and talking about these really important issues. Education is such a hugely important part of this fight, and it really is a fight. I would highlight how severe and how pervasive social media related harms are, even though at this point, when we hear social media and kids, we all get a bit concerned. It's more serious, it's more frequent, this amount of harm than people realize still. Uh, we have our resources available on our website, socialmediasafety.org. We have our services available for schools in the Chicago, Illinois area, and same as across the country. We're a national organization. We are also having a gala in Chicago, March 13th, coming up. That is a fantastic way to support all the work that we're doing, from the advocacy work to the education work and the research. We need that help. We can't function without the support of the community, of the grassroots support that allows us, the financial contributions enable us to do this work. So information for that's available on our website as well. And again, just want to thank you both for having me on.
Absolutely. It's been an honor to talk with you. We will put all of those links that you mentioned in our show notes. So listeners, you can visit our show notes and go straight to all those resources that Mark mentioned, like the free parent course, the safety software, information about the upcoming gala, things you can share with your kids' schools about what Mark and his team can provide for them. So listeners, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. We really appreciate it, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you so much.